Over the last few months, I've noticed a spate of videos essentially complaining that men who would otherwise be capable of engaging in work and participating in the labor force have not been doing so. Now, this isn't new per se, but I've found in recent months that the tone and the frequency of these sorts of things that are being reported on, it's certainly grown. And you have mainstream channels like CBS putting out reports, and as with many things concerning this matter, a lot of the people involved are missing the forest for the trees, although one could easily argue that they just don't want to see the forest at all in the first place. So, the general gist of the presentation, when you look at these mainstream specials and reports, as well as the other things, is that men between the ages of, say, 20 and 54, specifically between the ages of, say, 20 and 30, they're not working the way they used to. And one example they cite is factory jobs, which are now much safer and cleaner, and you get paid $30 an hour, which is not insignificant, and so on and so forth, and that these jobs need to be filled up by men, and they don't want to take these jobs. Some of these people will ask the question, don't they feel any sense of shame, living off the largesse of their parents as they live in the basement and play video games and eat Cheetos or whatever? Obviously, I'm being a bit hyperbolic here. But before we go into the details of why men might not want to work the way they used to, let's lay out something very clearly, because I think not enough people talk about this specific aspect of cultural and societal development. We live, gentlemen, in a time that I would refer to as the anything goes era, a society of anything goes. There are no more shocks anymore. There are no more surprises. I remember way back in 2004, I was talking to a then friend of mine, an English guy. He was about 15 years older than I was at the time. And even back then, he was talking about how way back in the day in London, those punks with mohawks and spiked hair, that was surprising. But these days, it's not a big deal. Well, fast forward to the present, and literally nothing is a big deal, right? We have online smut work. We have people that believe they are entirely different entities other than themselves. You name it, we have it these days. Nothing is really surprising in that sense. And so too is this applicable to societal expectations. There are no longer expectations placed on women. And why should they have any expectations, right? They're free, and they should be able to do whatever they want. So it shouldn't be a surprise in the anything-goes society that we live in, where there aren't really any true standards anymore, at least of the sort that people used to venerate and appreciate, that men aren't going to feel any sense of pressure, obligation, or for that matter, maybe most importantly, shame, for not working their buttocks off in their prime years. I am, of course, referring to social stigma. Social stigma is effectively dead for basically anything and everything. There are a few exceptions, but generally speaking, compared to even 25, 30 years ago, never mind 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, social stigma in the old-fashioned sense is dead. And it affects everyone, not just women, but also men. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to every man, but you get my point. The kind of expectation that existed, say, in 1953, as opposed to 2023, that a guy who, we'll use 23 again, a 23-year-old guy living in the basement of his parents, hanging out, watching television back then, would have been unthinkable. And to the extent that it could have happened, maybe his family might have disowned him. At the very least, he'd be assiduously looking for work, trying to rectify the situation. Not so anymore. There simply is no pressure that is sufficiently valid to force him to do what's quote-unquote expected of him. Now, I'm being descriptive here. I'm not passing judgment on the state of affairs. It is what it is. But ask yourself, sincerely, frankly, when is the last time you've actually been surprised by something that really just blew your mind? You saw the appearance of somebody, like some guy in a city with rainbow-colored hair spiked in every which way direction, and he had dildo earrings and piercings coming out of his eyelids. I mean, that wouldn't really surprise you anymore. That is the society that we have crafted in the current year, for good or for ill. And so that's also the setting that these men that are not working, allegedly, live in. There are no expectations. There's no ability to shame because anything goes. That is what has happened. Now, that doesn't prevent people from attempting to shame such men. But now we need to go to the crux of the matter, why these men aren't motivated. Well, it's all about meaning, purpose, and the fact that the ROI is usually, in their eyes, not good enough. And it just goes back to the basics. This, of course, in conjunction with the things I've just discussed. No shame, anything goes, and there's no reason to, because there's no guarantee that simply working or slaving away in a certain situation is going to get you results other than some money. And if you're a young guy and you can live off the largesse of your parents, why would you do that necessarily? Unless you had a near guaranteed track to success, for example, the way it used to be, where you would meet someone, get a wife, pop out a bunch of kids, the whole shebang. That just doesn't exist to the same extent that it used to. It does still exist. It's just quite rare. So these experts and these people, talking heads, saying, why aren't these young guys working? What's wrong with them? Yeah, people will say, oh, they're living off government largesse. Maybe some of them are. I think the majority of them are living off of their parents' largesse. But people, and specifically men, need reasons to do things. And if there isn't a pressing reason beyond some local job they're doing just to get by, to help pay some rent or what have you, you're not going to be able to force them into a type of employment they have no desire to do. And it's quite astonishing because we've crafted the society of anything goes, of no limitations, of no expectations, really. Although that's not quite accurate because clearly there's still expectations put on men. And then these talking heads and the world at large ask themselves and point fingers at men and say, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this crummy job? Why aren't you working 40, 45 hours a week on a conveyor belt? Isn't the answer to this obvious? There just isn't enough bang for the buck. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. And society's way too far gone to make it appealing. Yes, there's some people that climb a career ladder, still, men. Usually these are guys who are quote-unquote well-adjusted, and they probably have some romantic prospect. But the reason why they're worried is because a lot of these jobs, at least it's been claimed, say in this report by CBS, lack the numbers. Factory jobs, for example. They need to be filled up, and the CEOs are losing profit and revenue, so they want their worker drones there. They just can't find them. And none of this comes from a place of concern for the welfare of these guys. All they want are numbers, worker drones, these young men just to fill spots. They don't care about the welfare of these men, psychologically or physically. So is it really, again, any surprise that these young guys are tapping out of the workforce when the only thing they have to look forward to is a paycheck? Yes, paychecks are nice. You need a paycheck. But for a lot of people, that's insufficient. That is a dull and hollow existence for a lot of people. The toothpaste is out of the tube. There's no going back. We're not going to create a set of circumstances in this society where men feel obligated to do things when there clearly is no obligation to do them. Because it's a bit of yin and yang. If women can do whatever they want and not be shamed, then the correlate to that, even though people will attempt to shame men, is that men are going to do whatever they want and not care about being shamed. There's the difference, right? Women aren't shamed at all. Men get shamed. They just don't care anymore. There's no pressure to feel that way. There's no reason to feel that way. And that's what happens. And that's what people wanted. The people who decided to lead society down this route. Of course, this might be an unintended consequence because nobody's a clairvoyant. They couldn't see in the future. But does this really surprise you? So sure, they're going to keep on pumping out specials and news reports about how men aren't participating in the labor force. Okay. But that's what they wanted. Everything has been calibrated such that this probably was going to be the result. What is the point, many of them might ask? And I think it's a good question to ask. In other words, they need skin in the game. And if the powers that be can't answer the question, here's your skin in the game, I don't really see a compelling reason for these men to do what the powers that be want them to do. Anyway, as always, thank you for tuning in. Special thanks go out to my patrons. You guys are the best. You support the channel and keep it alive. And if you could kindly engage in the usual YouTube business of liking the video, commenting, subscribing if you're not yet a sub, sharing the video, much appreciated. YouTube does hate me, but it probably does something. And if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. Until the next time, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.